So, folks, we gotta talk about the events of today. And that is, of course, and that basically sums it up. So, I hope you all followed that. It was the only time I'm gonna be explaining that in great detail. And, I think it covers it. Um oh wait, okay. I'm seeing a lot of you guys aren't getting it. Okay, I'll try and maybe more carefully reword what I said. Okay? Donald Trump isn't doing super great. Uh he's in a particularly vulnerable position. And well, I want to show that to you in a couple graphs. Okay? These are, opinion polls over time. So, Trump has gone from being, the economy has gone from being Trump's best to worst issue, right? And cost of living is rock bottom. Guys, I've never seen Donald Trump fall below 33% on anything. He's below 33% on cost of living. It's genuinely crazy. He's at 27%. That's wild. Now, you can see here, his best issue was still polling at 44% in 2017. But now we're at 33% on, again, the thing that Republicans are traditionally associated with being, more widely regarded as good at. And this flailing on the economy seems, of course, at first glance to be unrelated to the Epstein files, right? However, let's take a look at, maybe more importantly, who are Americans blaming the bad economy on. Should come as no surprise that the majority of Americans think that Trump's policies are making the American economy worse. Despite the fact that Donald Trump is continuously trying to say, oh, it was Biden, it was Biden, it was Biden. That's not working. Despite the fact that Donald Trump just put together a gigantic press conference to say, no, guys, the economy is actually great. Affordability, it's a hoax. No, guys, everything's great. Please, don't believe your wallets. Don't believe your bank accounts. Everything's fine. People aren't buying it. Okay? And that brings us to where we are right now, which is that Donald Trump, in a very uniquely vulnerable position, has been brought to a precipice. The Epstein files. And, well, we were all kind of wondering how today was gonna go. And I gotta say, I think that possibly we've got the worst case scenario on our hands for Donald Trump. And what I mean by that is, they only released some of the Epstein files today, in violation of the law passed by Congress and signed into law by Donald Trump. And that's bad enough, right? That they only released some, but they also only released, mostly documents that were already publicly available. We were told that they were going to release hundreds of thousands of documents. Most of those documents we already know about. Some we don't, of course. But, well, guys, this is where we were going into today. This video, it was posted yesterday, December 18th, right? This is from Aiden Ross. Now, for those of you who don't know, Aiden Ross is a conservative content creator. He's very Nazi adjacent, we'll say. But he also likes to interview UFC guys. Here he is talking to a UFC guy by the name of Sean Strickland. I just want you guys to watch this.
I want to see you fight at the White House.
That'd be dope, dude.
I would love for you to fight at the White House.
Some guy fought and he said that he doesn't really want to fight in front of billionaires, and I do understand that. And I was like, that makes sense, bro. So I think I'd want to do the White House. Yeah, if there was some kind of inclusion for
No,
fans. So if there was some kind of inclusion for fans, it'd be more. But just to go hang out on the fucking Epstein list, I'm good, dog. I'm good, dude.
I want to see.
When you've got UFC guys on conservative Nazi adjacent streams going, nah, I'm good. I don't want to go hang out. I don't want to go hang out with the Epstein list. Well, that's where we were going into today. Right? That's where conservatives were going in today. Into today, rather. Well, guess what, folks? We didn't get the Epstein files released. Here's Ro Khanna summing up kind of where we're at the moment and where things could go in the future. And by the way, it's also co-signed by Thomas Massie. This is going to be a bipartisan push, guys, for the release of the Epstein files. Because again, for the exact same reason that every single Republican in the House, minus one, voted to release the Epstein files. And it's because not a single one of them wants to be known as the guy who went to bat for a pedophile. Okay? So let's see what Ro Khanna has to say here.
The Justice Department's document dump this afternoon does not comply with Thomas Massie and my Epstein Transparency Act. They released one document from a New York grand jury of 119 pages, totally blacked out. This despite a federal judge ordering them to release that document. And our law requires them to explain redactions. There's not a single explanation for why that entire document was redacted. We have not seen the draft indictment that implicates other rich and powerful men who were on Epstein's rape island, who either watched the abuse of young girls or participated in the abuse of young girls and the sex trafficking. The reality is Pam Bondi has obfuscated for months. She first said there were no more documents to be seen. Now she's admitting and releasing hundreds of thousands of documents, but it is an incomplete release with too many redactions. Thomas Massie and I are exploring all options. It can be the impeachment of people at justice, inherent contempt, or referring for prosecution those who are obstructing justice. We will work with the survivors to demand the full release of these files, to demand justice for the Epstein class and accountability.
So, folks, what this means is if, again, you have a push in Congress for some kind of accountability here that is bipartisan, you're going to have a lot of Congress people under a lot of pressure to act on it. Like, this is one of those things where they broke with Trump before, and it's going to be easier to break with Trump now when Donald Trump is even weaker than he was a couple months ago or a month ago. So what I'm trying to say here is Donald Trump is nosediving when it comes to all of his main issues. He's nosediving when it comes to his general support. He is at one of the least popular moments he has ever been at. And now, instead of just fully complying and releasing the documents, the Justice Department is trying to play games and say, oh, well, we'll release the rest of them later, and also not explaining their redactions, redacting entire documents that have been required specifically, not just by Congress, but by a judge for them to release. And we're having a moment here because we're also having folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene, reading the wind and seeing which way it's blowing and saying, I don't want to have any part of the midterms as a Republican right now. That's why she got out. You're having Republicans in Congress saying, oh, I'm not going to seek re-election. I'm out. They've seen how the special elections have been going. They know how it's going to go. And one of the things I wanted to talk about here is that in addition to all of this, right, you also have folks like Elise Stefanik, who was just running to be governor of New York. She just launched her campaign like a month or so ago, and she's a member of Congress. Her entire campaign was derailed by Donald Trump cozying up to Zoran Mamdani and being completely dog-walked by that man. into basically saying, no, actually, Zoran Mamdani is great. I would feel super comfortable living in New York City under Zoran Mamdani. And like Elise Stefanik was like number one on the list of people who like invested heavily in attack ads against Zoran Mamdani. And at this point, Elise Stefanik has said, I'm out. And I'm not just out of like the governor race, I'm out of Congress. While spending precious time with my family this Christmas season, I've made the decision to suspend my campaign for governor and will not seek re-election to Congress. I did not come to this decision lightly for our family. And I want to say, yeah, she didn't come to this decision lightly because she had huge ambitions and they all crashed down around her because of Donald Trump and this administration. She's getting out of Dodge so that she can try again after the Republican Party has obliterated itself, essentially. And I want you guys to understand here that Donald Trump is not operating from a position of power, and the Republican Party is breaking apart. Like, there have been calls and like meetings behind closed doors about removing Speaker Mike Johnson in the Republican Party in Congress. Like, they are not united at all. And the one thing that is going to unite them is some level of self-interest. Because up till now, they've all fallen in line behind Donald Trump because his cult of personality was that strong. But we saw in the previous Epstein vote that power is waning and cracking. And we see in the desperation of him trying to steal from troops to pay troops, that's desperation. When we take a look around, like the Affordable Care Act subsidies going away or is another example of like how they are weak. Republicans are seeing their health insurance costs for next year and they're panicking. So all of these members of Congress have an enormous amount of pressure from their constituents in order to, provide for them. And especially on this issue, especially on the issue of Epstein, right? Because Jeffrey Epstein is basically their great Satan. Like, there's not very many things that unite all of the propaganda channels, all of the propaganda networks of the GOP, right? Like, if you look at on YouTube at all of the conservative content creators out there, what you see by and large are conspiracy theorists. People who are just like trying to, yarn work and corkboard it to like figure out what kind of secret plan the aliens are up to with the frogmen and the ratmen and all that jazz. They're out there just like completely losing it, right? Like, the big war in the Conservative Party right now is between essentially Nazis, people who want to be openly anti-Semitic about their hatred of Jewish people, and like Christian theocrats who want to be a little bit more subtle about their hatred of Jewish people. Again, if you know anything about the evangelical like nationalist movement, you'll understand that their support of the state of Israel only extends so far as they believe it will bring about the second coming of Christ, at which point Jews will be annihilated by God. So, like, again, these are the two main factions right now in the Republican Party. And the one thing that kind of unites all the conspiracy theorists and the bigots together is that they hate Jeffrey Epstein and pedophiles. Like, that's the big thing, right? And so when you look at that, you need to understand that that leaves precious little wiggle room for conservatives in Congress to try and wiggle out of any kind of vote when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. When they are put against the wall and they have to make their choice, they choose what they know their constituents want on this issue, and that is to release the Epstein files. And that is possibly also going to include keeping those who are keeping them hidden now, despite the act of Congress, held to account. So it'll be very interesting to see how this evolves in the coming days and hours, for sure. But like, part of the law necessitated that they release, for example, a searchable database. The database, as it stands now, is not searchable. Here, I don't know if you guys can see that on screen. The Justice Department's website also contains a search function, though it is unclear if it's working properly. A query for Epstein returned no results. So, I mean, this law has been broken in a number of ways. I mean, just look at this. I hate to hand Jake Tapper a W, but look at this.
As much of this as possible.
Talk about blacking out. I don't know if I can get a close-up of my phone. This is one of the documents that the Justice Department released. It's 100 pages.
Right.
This is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see. It's all black. It's just 100 pages of redaction. That's the transparency we're getting here.
Right. And I'll point to as much of this.
I mean, like, I don't know that there could possibly be a worse outcome for the Trump administration on this one. Did they redact too close to the sun? Yeah, I think they did. Like, I think they did. It's really, really astounding, but if the Trump administration thought that, like, delaying the release of these files or, you know, redacting them to hell was going to satisfy their base, if they saw Bill Clinton in a dress, like, no, this is going to infuriate the entire base.
First thing I'm searching if/when the search function works is Bubba.
We'll have to see, but like, it's genuinely insane. You know, we were supposed to get hundreds of thousands of new documents. The only new documents in this dump are around 3,965 files. That's what we got. And this is going to infuriate the MAGA base. You know, it remains to be seen how MAGA influencers will treat this. If the past Jeffrey Epstein handling is anything to go by, a lot of them are going to try and be quiet or downplay this until the anger of their base moves them to take more definitive stances. But like, this is nuts. Like, I'm sorry, if you are deeply invested into like the QAnon cult or like deeply invested into the release of the Epstein files, like you're gonna be going absolutely bonkers with this, because when you have nothing but redactions or significant redactions in these documents, what winds up happening is that the blank space made by the redactions gets filled in by the imaginations of conspiracy theorists. This is going to be so much worse for the Trump administration as a result. And yeah, it's going bonkers over there. Yeah, one of the redacted files containing 119 pages of entitled Grand Jury New York is entirely blacked out. The Justice Department went into federal court twice in Manhattan seeking the release of grand jury materials arising from the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his close associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Even though a judge agreed to the department's second request, it appears as if the grand jury materials remain shielded from the public. And again, any kind of even, like, I'm sorry, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I gotta wonder, there's gotta be some damning shit in there. And any kind of conspiracy theorist is gonna go wild with that. Like, absolutely hog wild. As normal people see it as a cover-up, but is MAGA world upset, or are they making excuses? Oh, they're pretty mad. They're pretty mad, right? For example, here's an account I found titled Red Pill Czar. If anyone in MAGA defends Trump's heavily and illegally redacted partial dump of the Epstein files, you are complicit in covering up for pedophiles. He was only allowed to redact victim names, but instead 70% is redacted. Fuck Trump. I'm no longer MAGA and no longer support him. Like, they're very angry, to say the least. MAGA influencers are a little bit more loosey-goosey on it, I suppose one could say. But yeah, it's not looking super good for these folks. This is the clip I wanted to play for you guys. as usual, one of my bellwethers for how, your average everyday conservative is going to take this information is the internet's dumbest man, Asmongold. So let's just take a look at how he's reacting to a lot of this real quick.
Who's ready to see the Epstein files? I feel like Stevie Wonder. How about that, huh? Wow. Look at that. Now we finally know. It's good that they finally decided to tell us what the truth is, and we can finally have justice for these victims. Thank God for that, right, guys? Let's see, is there going to be anything here at all? Not a single one. There's no way there is not a single one. I really think that there needs to be a conversation about the fact that they said they didn't have these files. They're really, because remember whenever they said they didn't have them?
Yeah, it's almost like they're a bunch of liars and charlatans. Yeah, it's almost like that, isn't it? It's almost like every single time they get up to a microphone, they lie. It's shocking that the guy known for lying the most in office as president ever would tell lies.
Well, why? Yeah, like, what the fuck? If this was here, then how did you not know that? They don't exist? Exactly. Like, this is, and to me, like, obviously it's good that the files were revealed, but think about it like this. So, I don't ever think about stopping and getting mad at the cookies. I think about the cookie factory that makes the cookies. And yes, obviously it's good.
Why are you getting mad at cookies, bro? What cookies are enraging you? Okay, but yeah, go on.
That some of this information is now out and it's made public, but the problem is that the person that, basically hid this information from the public is still in a position of power. They're still, like, I mean, you don't know.
This man, by the way, just a couple days ago, posted a video titled, "This is Trump's best speech yet," about Donald Trump's incoherent, rambling attempt to self-fillet in front of the entire nation to try and salvage his terrible economic numbers. This is where one of his, like, top guys is on this issue.
What you don't know. So there's no way for us to be certain about what's still being reserved, what's being withheld, what's not being shown. Like, and so this is the problem that I have, is that the trust is broken and people don't know, like, why is it that you said you didn't have anything and there were no files?
Because they have something to hide.
But now there's a law and there's a bunch of files. There's 300,000 pages of files. It's relatively inaccurate. But I will tell you this.
Oh, good. He's getting his information from trustworthy journalists like Ian Miles Chong and Libs of TikTok. Again, this is how deep this man is conspiracy-brained and, like, broken by conservative propaganda. And even he is putting it together that, oh, hey, wait a minute. They lied to us.
Anybody who's not taught any of these, like, right-wing, like, MAGA influencer people that are
like you, my guy,
not talking about the Epstein files.
Okay, you are talking about the Epstein files, though.
They're compromised.
They're compromised. I repeat, they are compromised. God.
They are the same thing as, like, those deranged leftists that keep saying that Ethan Klein was suing Casey Tron and Denims for, because he hates.
Can I just say real quick, I do not give a fuck about any of this streamer drama.
Hates women. Like, these are two sides of the same coin. It's the same thing. It's just maybe one of them you agree with, so you're giving it a pass. They're totally compromised. This is a massive story. Everybody should be talking about this. If you're not, I think you've got a good fucking reason.
The world's dumbest man has the rarest of W's. Just an absolutely insane confluence of the stars to have him actually say accurate information. Now, of course, folks, we did still get some new information. And that little bit of confirmation on various parts of what was in the Epstein files, you know, you can piece it together to make something a little bit more interesting, right? So, for example, one of the things that the Epstein files confirm so far is Maria Farmer's account. Because in 1996, Maria Farmer claimed that she went to the FBI and reported that Jeffrey Epstein was seeking out child pornography. And people have doubted her and have called her a liar and a gold digger and just vile, horrible things as a result of her coming forward with that story. And the FBI has been silent about it for literally decades now. Well, the Epstein files do confirm that she did in fact go to the FBI with this claim about Jeffrey Epstein. That's pretty interesting. And here she is talking with the Times. "I've waited 30 years, she said. I can't believe it. They can't call me a liar anymore." Ms. Farmer said she was grateful to be vindicated, but heartbroken that the FBI did not take steps to stop Mr. Epstein until years after her report. "They should be ashamed," Ms. Farmer said, adding, "They harmed all of these little girls. That part devastates me." The FBI did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Of course. Now, one of the additional things that is interesting specifically about Maria Farmer's allegation about Jeffrey Epstein and about that being confirmed is that Maria Farmer is also one of the people who had a claim about Donald Trump. Here she is in about 4 months ago, recounting a story on CNN.
Is Maria Farmer, who says Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell sexually assaulted her. So she says she saw Trump at Epstein's office late at night in 1995. At the time, she was 25 years old. Epstein had just hired Farmer, who was an artist, to help him acquire art. Now, Farmer urged the FBI to look at Trump's connections to Epstein twice, in 1996 and again in 2006, which, of course, means Trump's name could very well be in those government files that the administration is refusing to release. Maria Farmer is now suing the government to try to get the unredacted files about the allegations she brought forward about Epstein. Now, President Trump has not been the target of any investigation related to Epstein, nor has he been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in this case. Maria Farmer is out front now for her first television interview, sharing her story since filing her lawsuit, and she is joined by her attorney, Jennifer Freeman. So thanks very much to both of you. And Maria, I want to give everyone a chance to understand exactly what happened here. I mean, you said that Jeffrey Epstein calls you to come to his office and you go, and then you're sitting there waiting.
Well, again, this interview is from 4 months ago, guys.
And Donald Trump walks in. What happened?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on, Aaron. I really appreciate it, because I need to say up front that I've waited 3 decades to be able to even be heard about this, because the government has not held any of the people I reported accountable. And so basically the night before I went in, before I began working for Epstein, he called me at very late in the evening and asked me to come up to the Helmsley Palace offices. And I didn't even have money for a subway token. It's kind of embarrassing. So I had to go running up there. And so I told Epstein, I'll be up there. It'll probably take me until like 9. He's like, okay. So I get there and I'm waiting. It's dark. Like there's no light on in the offices. And I thought that was really weird. So I'm seated against the wall in the main part of the offices and just waiting for Epstein. And he says, I'll be out in a minute, you know, and he's got the door closed. And then a few minutes later, this man walks in a business suit, kind of tall, imposing. And I immediately was like, that's Donald Trump. What's he doing here? I'm supposed to be working for Epstein and interviewing with him. Why is Donald Trump here? And he walked up about, a few feet from me and just stood over me in a very imposing way and looked at me like he was in on some secret or something. It was really weird, like smirking, kind of. And I felt threatened, so I made an ugly face. And when I made that ugly face, Epstein walked out from the offices on this side. Trump's standing here, I'm here. And he walks out of his office and he goes, oh, no, no, no. He was laughing at me. And he goes, she's not here for you. Follow me, right? And he escorts him in to this other room. And I always wondered, who was she in there? Was someone in there, right? And I have no way of knowing, nothing. But I felt very intimidated because I had on running shorts and I was vulnerable, sweaty, just a nobody in an office with these two men. That it felt very predatory and uncomfortable. I have to say that when I made that ugly face, he backed off. It wasn't like he was aggressive after that, but he made a really vulgar comment following. And I don't know if it was like, like locker room talk in the 90s, the way men were, but he made a joke to Epstein, oh, I thought she was 16. And I thought that was so strange because at the time my sister she was 15 actually. And I didn't think it was funny, even though it was just a little bit inappropriate, but I thought, I don't know what it was. But anyway, and then they entered that room.
So Epstein says, she's not for you. And then when did Trump make the comment about your age? Again, you were 25 at the time, right? So, I mean, you were a 25-year-old woman. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a
was it
woman,
after Epstein
right.
said that comment that he made the comment about age, or?
Yes. So he first said, no, she's not here for you, which immediately made me feel weird. Like, was there someone there, right, in that other room? And so that's another reason I was nervous. And so as soon as he said that, laughed, I made the face, all that stuff, they started to walk away into that other room where he's escorting him. He goes, come with me. And he takes Trump into this other room in the offices at 9 o'clock at night. And there's no one else in, that I know of in these offices, but was someone in that room. So I always wondered what that was about. And anyway, that comment was made under his breath as they were entering that room.
As they were in that room.
I thought it was rude. I don't care what age I was. Like, it's rude to say.
Which, Jennifer, I guess, brings me to where you are now. I know you're helping Maria now sue to get the unredacted files.
So, yeah. Donald Trump saying, after clearly making a move on this young 25-year-old girl he finds alone in an office at Jeffrey Epstein's house, says, oh, I thought she was 16. Now, obviously, in this case, we have only Maria Farmer's words to go on, but the fact that she has been truthful and vindicated today by the Epstein document release adds even more credibility. Not that I disbelieved her account before, but there were plenty of people who tried to poke holes in this particular story based on her claims about going to the FBI not being verified. Those claims are now verified. And I would just like to say, I think her claims about Donald Trump here are also true. Yeah, close one. He almost went after an adult. Now, what else have we found? What else has been released that we didn't know about or that we didn't have images of? Well, we have a lot of images of Bill Clinton with Jeffrey Epstein. Numerous of them in a way where almost certain, look, my position is kind of one where I feel like anyone who spent sufficient time around Jeffrey Epstein certainly knew about what he was doing and almost certainly participated in it as well, right? And Bill Clinton, I mean, he's all over these images. But you also have Michael Jackson, because of course, and Bill Clinton. And look, there's the painting of Bill Clinton in a dress. famously in Epstein's collection. Deeply weird stuff. Deeply gross, uncomfortable, weird. Additionally, for those who are like, oh, why wouldn't these girls and women come out sooner? Well, here's one of the documents that was released. Let's take a look at the alt text real quick. Okay. Facts of a police complaint. Complainant stated that she is a professional stated that she is a professional artist and took pictures of her sisters, 12 and 14 years old, for her own personal artwork. Epstein stole the photos and negatives and is believed to have sold the pictures to potential buyers. Epstein at one time requested, redacted, to take pictures of young girls at swimming pools. Epstein is now threatening, redacted, that if she tells anyone about the photos, he will burn her house down. The FBI had these documents. This man was threatening to, burn down the houses of people who could potentially blab about him. Yeah, you have to understand, this isn't just, idle talk from some nobody. This is a guy who is powerful enough and has the connections to actually burn your house down and get away with it. There's some pretty disturbing stuff in all of this, but a lot of what we have continues to come back down to just a whole lot of nothing. Whole lot of redactions. I mean, this is ridiculous. And again, you have documentations here about, people being potential buyers.
But there were very creepy redacted memes in the files, like bad Photoshop memes with blacked out faces, very gross.
Yeah, no, so for those of you, I talked earlier about this in stream, but I spent time today looking through a lot of the Epstein files that were released, and I eventually stopped because Epstein had a lot of art on his walls featuring women and girls in various states of undress or dress. And eventually I had the realization that there is a likelihood here that the Trump administration is not, in fact, editing out all of the alleged child sex abuse material. And I got a sickness in the pit of my stomach and I stopped. It's really, really gross. And there's a lot of just horrific stuff. Now, one of the claims that the Justice Department has made about these files is that we're not redacting the names of politicians. Here's their statement on Twitter, because, again, all of their official statements go up on Twitter these days. The Justice Department is not redacting the names of any politicians. And as the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche made clear, and also keep in mind today they were only sending out Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. The guy who is delivering all of the bad news today, all of the things that were going to get people right mad, was the Deputy Attorney General. And it makes you wonder, what was the Attorney General up to that was so important that she just couldn't be bothered to address the public about the most consequential political happening in the country at the moment? Interesting. So all I'm saying is they sent him out there to do the dirty work and to try and deflect some of the heat. Whatever Pam was doing, she was doing it elsewhere so that Todd could take the heat. But I don't think that's going to work. As Todd Blanche made clear, the only redactions being applied to the documents are those required by law, full stop. Consistent with the statute and applicable laws, we are not redacting the names of individuals or politicians unless they are a victim. And I just gotta say, if that's the case, there's an awful lot of weird redactions in there then. Just a lot of weird redactions that don't make a whole lot of sense. And also, it seems kind of like they're lying, because Fox News reported that they're lying. The Justice Department redacted the names and identifiers of victims. Fox News Digital has learned that the same redaction standards were applied to politically exposed individuals and government officials. That's an interesting thing to say. That's a really interesting way of phrasing that. So, politically exposed individuals were redacted, as well as government officials. That seems like an interesting coinkydink, considering that there's at least one extraordinarily prominent government official that is expected to be turning up in those files a whole lot more than he did. But no one would ever do that. Just go on the internet and tell lies. Anyway, oddly enough, in all of the redactions, and those redactions, by the way, include heavily either redacting Donald Trump's name or outright not releasing files that include Donald Trump, because again, as you know, there are hundreds of thousands of documents they have yet to release. We'll see if they do. But I do want to draw your attention to this image, which is of Jeffrey Epstein here, next to, I would suppose, a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, in a frame that says "Once in a Blue Moon." But what's happening further down? Oh, they're holding a check for $22,500 signed by, Donald J. Trump. That's interesting. Well, clearly it couldn't be related to anything important, like this story pointed out by Midas Touch that emerged from the documents. Let's see here. During one of Doe's encounters with Epstein, he took her to Mar-a-Lago, where he introduced her to its owner, Donald J. Trump, introducing 14-year-old Doe to Donald J. Trump. While these visits made Doe extremely uncomfortable, Epstein and Maxwell made her feel she could not refuse them. During this time, Epstein started to pay for voice lessons for Doe and insisted that Doe could not advance her career in any way without him. When Doe expressed hesitation about spending time with Epstein and Maxwell or acquiescing to their desires, Epstein and Maxwell would threaten Doe and scold her for being ungrateful. During one of Doe's encounters with Epstein, he took her to Mar-a-Lago, where he introduced her to its owner, Donald J. Trump. While introducing her to Donald J. Trump, Epstein elbowed Trump playfully, asking him, referring to Doe, "This is a good one, right?" Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. They both chuckled, and Doe felt uncomfortable, but at the time was too young to understand why. Look, if you need it spelled out for you, the implication here is that someone who is older and more experienced would know that they're chuckling because they are sexually interested in her. That's why she felt uncomfortable in that situation. A sensation she would only later be able to identify why and the source of it. Too young to understand, no more needs to be said, indeed. So, folks, I want to end this segment by just deferring to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking. Here is a small interview with the Epstein victim's attorney on the events of the day, how things have played out, and where they stand on this issue.
Me now is Eric Hudawi, partner and managing attorney at the Bloom firm. He represents multiple Jeffrey Epstein survivors. Catherine Christian is MS Now legal analyst and former assistant DA at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Eric, is Congressman Massey right? Are there the names of at least 20 men associated with sex crimes that should be in these documents?
I would imagine so, and I think that's a great way because...
Yeah, one thing to point out here is that the Epstein victims got together with members of Congress and put together their own list of around 20 names of men that should be appearing in these files. And I believe we have not had those men named. So we know that the Trump administration is holding out on naming and identifying the perpetrators of this abuse. They are protecting pedophiles.
Of course, there's a
And
lot
rapists.
of distrust of this administration, and rightfully so. As we sit here today, Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in a minimum security resort-style prison. So this administration has done nothing to gain the trust of the representative of the survivors, the public, or the media. So we do need to find a way that we can verify whether once they say these are all the files, they really are all the files. And I think that's one great way is we know certain names are in there. We know certain things should be in those files. So
well,
if
what
they're
else?
Not,
What else beyond those names?
well, it's really just based on our investigation. We know a lot about what Jeffrey Epstein did. We know a lot about his circle. We know a lot about how he operated. So if there's a great lack of just any sort of, for instance, if there's no Republican names mentioned, that would certainly be suspicious, right? If every single name we see happens to be a Democrat, that would be suspicious. Or there's just sort of missing emails, certain email chains are not complete, or there's names redacted that don't seem like that would be the name of a survivor that would be redacted. So there's a lot of ways. Also,
I will say there are a lot of men in these files who have their faces redacted, and I just have a feeling most of them are not victims.
Surveillance footage missing. We know that there was a lot of surveillance in his house and in the island. Is there chunks of surveillance missing? Are there days missing? Are there hours or minutes missing? These are the type of things we have to look for, because certainly I will not be taking their word for it.
Catherine, the deputy AG says the DOJ will release these files now in batches, but Democrats say that's not allowed. That's not what the law says. The deadline is 11:59 tonight. I spoke with Congressman Yasemin Ansari, and here's what she told me last hour. There's a lot.
Will Trump ever have a Brutus? I mean, the Brutus is going to come in the form of the entire Congress. Keep in mind, folks, the pressure on congressional Republicans is going to be enormous to act. And my feeling is that it's not outside of the realm of possibility. This isn't a guarantee by any means, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that he could be impeached for this. And again, the impulse here is going to be from, Republicans in Congress realizing that basically it is a question of either do they continue to have a career in politics, or do they give it all up for Donald Trump, a man who would genuinely not care if they lived or died.
A lot more to this investigation, and so I do want to make sure the American public knows that this White House has been engaged in a cover-up all year, and therefore, when they've already said only several 100,000 documents will be released today, this won't be everything.
Why? Out of pure political self-interest. Every single one of these people is there because they are self-interested, selfish motherfuckers. They're out for their own careers. The only reason these people rode the Trump train is because it served them politically to do so. The second it no longer does, the knives will be out. So
there's a lot more out there. The Epstein estate has more documentation. The financial institutions have a lot more information. And so we will continue to work tirelessly to make sure we get all of the answers for the American public and for the victims and survivors of the crimes.
Work tirelessly, Catherine.
The dude gets impeached like every other year. Yeah, dude gets impeached, but that pressure extends to the Senate, too.
But the question is, if this is the law...
There's a reason the Senate was also pressured into passing the law that required the release of the Epstein files.
If the law says you need to...
And I can tell you, Mike Johnson did literally everything he could to prevent this law from even being introduced, and he couldn't stop it. Donald Trump, I assure you, used every trick in his book to try and stop this law from getting passed. He couldn't stop it.
These documents, you need to release them by this date, and they're not released.
If the Senate wasn't swayed, these today wouldn't have happened in the first place.
What legally can happen?
There really is no legal mechanism. That's why you haven't heard any of the Congress people say there is. The reality is...
What's the point of a law if you can just ignore it?
Well, the reality is Mr. Blanche did not say he wasn't releasing anything. He said he's releasing 100,000 documents today, and they need more time to release others in batches. If he had said today, sorry, we're not releasing anything, that would be a problem. But even in that case, what would happen? You go to court, order it to be released. I mean, that's the problem that we have.
So
you could also impeach Pam Bondi. Like, Congress is not without tools here.
The problem also that's been pointed out is that these get released. We've had a few pictures.
I just fundamentally disagree with her assertion here.
So far that were released by the committee, right? And there's no context to them. There's no dates. We don't know what they might mean. It includes this one yesterday. It shows a foot with a quote from the book Lolita written on it. I think we should have that picture. Talk about the fine line officials are
yeah, gross.
Walking when it comes to releasing these kinds of images. And there are others that are more graphic and more disturbing.
By the way, in case you don't know, Lolita is a book about a grown-ass adult man having a relationship with a child.
And the redactions. So, yeah, they want to redact some things because they want to protect people. But on the other hand, the people are calling for transparency.
It's well past 11:59 by my count, and there's no new drops. I say get the impeachment train started.
Look, we'll see what happens tomorrow. It'll be an interesting day for sure. My impression from Massey and Kana is that they're going to be working on something to make to pressure the administration. We'll see what exactly they come up with.
There are survivors who do not want their identity revealed, do not want any information about them, and they need to be respected. Yes, there may be men, I'll say there were men, even though Ms. Maxwell's a woman, so clearly women were involved, who may have been accused, but I would be remiss if I didn't say the key word is accused. Suppose they had been looked at and it was determined that no crime was committed. Why should their names be released?
Or did they look at them and say no federal crime was committed, which could be different than a state law?
Exactly. But we need to know that without just releasing people's names, without knowing the context.
Do you believe that
I disagree. If you went and hung out on Epstein's rape island, people should know who you are.
DOJ will have the survivors' best interests at heart when they decide which information to reveal and which to redact?
Again,
can't Congress just leak the unredacted files? What stops them from doing that? My understanding is that Congress does not possess the unredacted files. Only the DOJ has them at this point, is my understanding, but I could be wrong on that.
This goes back to my distrust of this administration and how they have dealt with the Jeffrey Epstein.
Like, my guess on how this is going to play out, based on this initial government action, is that they're going to try and slow walk this to buy time to come up with a plan and a legal strategy. And my hunch is that, kind of like Nixon with the walls closing around him with Watergate, they're not going to be able to really put together a legal defense. Like, this is a delaying tactic. It is not going to stop the files entirely from being released. So we'll see kind of how this goes, but I think every day they delay releasing all of the files is another day where some truly incalculable levels of political damage is done to Trump in the eyes of his base.
Issue. They have not been a trustworthy administration. It's been stated many times that they've been involved in a cover-up, it appears, to keep these files private. So I'm concerned that they do not have anybody's interest in mind other than Donald Trump's. However, I have been in touch with the DOJ. My team and myself have been speaking with the DOJ about redacting, providing our clients and our names to make sure that they are 100% redacted. So I do believe there are some efforts, at least, to keep the victims and the survivors' names private and redacted. However, I'm not sure those same efforts are being put forth to make sure that the full comprehensive files, other than the victims' names, are released, because we just heard today we're not even going to get the full trench of documents today, which really there's no excuse. They've had a long time to do this. This isn't the type of thing where they just learned yesterday, oh, we got to get these documents out. They've known for a long time. There is no excuse to not have the entire full trench of documents available today, so the survivors can finally get accountability, justice, and closure.
So what will you be looking for?
A lot of things. I want to be looking for, first, of course, what everyone's looking for is to see who may have co-abused with Jeffrey Epstein. We know.
I mean, so this administration is absolutely fucked, huh? My understanding, look, I don't know if they're absolutely fucked, but I do think that this is an issue that MAGA voters can't really stop. They can't really just be like, oh, okay, and then like go on with their lives. Like the entire focus for like the last, I don't know, 6 years since Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, like, has been kind of based around the idea that Donald Trump is like a secret pedophile fighter and is going to like bring all the pedophiles to justice. Like you've got a not insignificant portion of the MAGA base arising out of QAnon. And QAnon's entire thing was that Donald Trump is like secretly like destroying the swamp and the deep state and the pedophiles, hashtag trust the plan. And like, they're not gonna just let this one go, because basically the entire propaganda apparatus they've surrounded themselves with lends itself to this is the most important issue. They've believed that for years now, and I don't think they can just give it up. And the question has always been, which is going to wind up being stronger, their cultish devotion to Donald Trump, or like, do they actually care about like victims of pedophilia? And like, for a lot of them, they might genuinely care, at least on this one issue and this one time, like, it's going to be something that's nearly impossible for many of them to let go, especially when the Trump administration is doing nothing but like fostering more suspicion of itself.
Jeffrey Epstein was an absolute monster and the greatest predator of our time. Who else may have actually co-abused? What evidence is there of other individuals? Second, I would like to see what individuals aided, abetted, or facilitated those crimes. Much like Ghislaine Maxwell has been convicted of, what individuals, especially high profile, facilitated those crimes? And third, remember, I've had a lot to say about the sweetheart deal Alex Acosta gave Jeffrey Epstein in 2008. But the one thing Acosta did is he made...
Well, Ryan, one way one could know is whether or not a judge ordered an unredacted version of a document to be released, right? For example, the New York grand jury findings in the Epstein trial. A judge ordered that entire thing to be released to the public after the Trump administration asked for it to be made released to the public. And in this tranche of documents that was released, it was included, but every single page was redacted. Every single page. And I don't think one can claim every single page was a victim. Every single word was the name of a victim? I don't think so.
Jeffrey Epstein, a registered sex offender, and that was public. So post-2008, Jeffrey Epstein was a registered sex offender. I'd like to see...
Their devotion to Trump is mythical, but propaganda has rotted their brains and the train has too much momentum to stop. I don't think they care. I think they just can't stop.
I mean, that's, I think, a fair point.
Continued to associate closely with Jeffrey Epstein after it was known that he was a predator.
That was my question about some of the pictures that were released. We don't know when, and it matters whether it was before or after.
Absolutely, it matters. He was a public registered sex offender. For some time, he was wearing an ankle bracelet because he was on house arrest. And that was pretty public, especially among his circle. So I am very interested to see some of the dates on those pictures we saw, and perhaps further pictures.
Oh, and Rod Ramos, absolutely, there will still be people who support Donald Trump, even if one of the documents proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's a pedophile. Like, even if that happened, he would still have supporters. But the issue is, would he have enough supporters to keep congressional Republicans on his side? Would he still maintain enough power over his base to continue holding the position he holds? And my hunch is that the answer here is no. Like, again, he's at 33% support on economic issues. He's at 27% support on, cost of living. And like, if you throw on top that like he was doing pedophile shit with Jeffrey Epstein, I don't think he survives that, like, politically.
and further evidence of who continued to go to his island, who continued to go to his house and spend a lot of time with Jeffrey Epstein after it was revealed that he was a registered sex offender. Those people have a lot of questions.
And financial records.
Yeah.
There were a lot of suspicious activity reports reported to the Department of Treasury by his bank.
Yeah, by the way, interestingly enough, my understanding is all of those Treasury documents that the Trump administration has been sitting on, that Scott Bessent, rather, has been sitting on and ignoring calls to make public. My understanding is none of those documents have been made public. The documents detailing Jeffrey Epstein's financial affairs and the flow of money that went into Jeffrey Epstein's dealings and out of Jeffrey Epstein's dealings. And it's interesting to me that the Trump administration has been just sitting on all of that because most of that information isn't going to be dealing directly with victims whose names need to be redacted, if you know what I'm saying. But Scott Bessent has just been sitting on it and ignoring requests to release those documents, which now are legally mandated to be released. So pretty interesting that hasn't come to light, isn't it? Considering we all still don't know how Jeffrey Epstein made his money.
Banks. Let's follow the money. Who was giving him money? Who was he sending money to? How did he pay for that island?
Yeah, I also, Catherine, want to read you a quote from a New York Times news story. They did in-depth reporting on the money, how he got rich, but also on the relationships that he had. And this was about a victim who described being sexually assaulted, but later expected an apology. Quote, instead, she said, Mr. Epstein warned her that cameras in the mansion had recorded their encounter. He insisted she come to parties there. Terrified that her parents and pastor would find out what had happened, she acquiesced.
Also, look, Amber Brains, you're 1000% right. You know, like, I'm sorry, if you go to a party and you look around and you see a bunch of extremely young girls and you get to talking to any of them, you're gonna know beyond a shadow of a doubt within like 5 seconds how old they are. They all knew. You can't tell me that people going to these parties where there were 14-year-old girls didn't know. Like, I'm in my 30s, chat. I'm in my 30s. When I meet somebody who's like 20 years old or in their early 20s even, like, I'm like, oh God, you're a baby. Like, you're a baby. And I can assure you, when I see like a teenager, they're even more of a baby. Like, there's no way these elderly men didn't know. I'm sorry. There is no fucking way.
Her book, Nobody's Girl, Virginia Giuffre, describes cameras that rolled in all of Jeffrey Epstein's property. She talks about seeing rows of tapes. Is it clear why there have never been more prosecutions?
Well, and the trans raider, I assume when I am 48 years old, I will look similarly at people in their 30s and be like, you're a baby. You're a baby. Like, I think you gain like an ability to judge like people's age a little bit better the older you get. You're assuming they're interested in anything they had to say. Well, yes. But like, if you are innocently at a party, one might assume you would innocently be talking to the other people at the party and realize it's weird that a bunch of 14-year-olds are here. Unless, you know, you're all about the 14-year-olds being there and, you know.
There's no way people weren't talking about what went on there, similar to how everyone knew about Harvey Weinstein.
1000% Sake Tanuki. Like, there's no way Bill Clinton didn't know what the fuck was going on. There's no way, you know, like Mick Jagger didn't know what the fuck was going on. There's no way Michael Jackson didn't know what the fuck was going on. There's no fucking way.
Or where those tapes are?
That it's not clear because search warrants would have been executed at the time that he was prosecuted by the Southern District. they should have had those videos unless they were erased. But that should be in the file. We looked for videos. They were no longer there. That's information that we could find out about.
Eric, do you have any idea what happened to those tapes?
I don't. That's one of the reasons we need to see the full file, right? There's so many questions. There's so much mystery still. Jeffrey Epstein's the only person I've ever seen to get special treatment beyond the grave. There's still privacy. There's still mystery. We still don't know really what went on, or the breadth of what went on, and who facilitated those heinous, heinous crimes.
Eric Fudali, Catherine Christian, thank you both.
Can we play this?
Phillips was in her early 20s when she first met him, and says she endured years of abuse from him and from other people in his network. And thank you for being here. We've heard a lot from lawyers. We've heard a lot from lawmakers. How are you feeling tonight?
It's journalistic malpractice to not bring up the clip
Well,
of
I'm
Cash
feeling
and
very
Bongino
upset.
claiming that Epstein only trafficked for himself.
Oh, God. Right? I mean, the fact that Donald Trump has called all of this a hoax. He's called all of this a hoax.
I've always stood up and I stand for so many survivors out there. I was in my early 20s. There was hundreds of girls in their early 20s, but we're always thinking about, the children, the teenagers that were harmed in this way. And as you guys are reporting on, Maria Farmer coming forward in the late 90s, 1996, almost 30 years ago, and saying that, these people were taking, pictures of us and selling them to others, and then they were threatened not to say anything. That's a pretty big statement to say. That's pretty much the same thing that most of the survivors coming forward today are saying. The same type of fear that they had, and the same type of silencing and threatening. And I don't believe, I know the former person you just had on said that, maybe it slipped through the cracks, or they didn't follow up on it. There's no way that it was slipping through the cracks, or they weren't following up on it. What happened is they realized they were probably up against very powerful people. And I believe that's what's mirroring what's happening today. 30 years later, they're still seeing, oh my goodness, we're up against these very powerful people. What do we do? And that's why we're seeing with these files, just little things here and there, and so much being redacted and not getting the full picture and the full answers.
Yeah, the Justice Department says they're protecting victims by not releasing everything and by redacting things. That's not how you see it, though, tonight.
No, because the victims want answers. We want to know, we want to connect the dots. We want our stories to make sense. We want to know a lot of different things. So, I mean, of course, they're just going to say that just buys time, but they're protecting themselves, not the victims.
You had said before that you had talked to some other survivors as well and talked about creating your own list of the people who were around Epstein that, in addition to him, abused women. Do you think that is still something that is a step y'all might have to take?
Well, we've been taking that step. We've been talking to survivors. And when I spoke to survivors, many more have come forward. And by speaking to others, remember, there's hundreds of us. So not myself in particular, but many others who were younger, underage, or were forced to sleep with certain people. They know those names, and we have put those lists together and given them to the proper authorities. And so I do feel like the DOJ and everybody has everything they need. And with going through the files, you can also pick them out and say, okay, this person was here, and do a little bit more research and a little more digging on those particular people that we've given them those names. I don't understand why it's not happening. I feel like they have so much information to start connecting the dots and for survivors to get justice. But as you're seeing, we just keep stalling.
Yeah. Despite that, you got good old Kash Patel here. No credible information Epstein trafficked victims to others. None whatsoever, he said. Not a couple months ago. Guys, they don't have the information. There's no way they could come to that conclusion after hundreds of thousands of pages of documents that indicate that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked girls and women to other men. look, at the end of the day, this administration has stated over and over and over again that, oh, no, Jeffrey Epstein, it's a hoax. It's all a hoax. Oh, well, no, look, guys, we've already released all the credible information that Jeffrey Epstein was guilty, but, like, we have no credible information that he was actually involved in trafficking for other people. He just trafficked them for himself. Look, guys, no, look, we've already released all of the pertinent information. Like, guys, you don't need to pass a law that mandates we release it all. Okay, you've passed a law that says we have to release it all, and we've released a lot of it, so that's good enough, right? Get off our backs, man. Like, guys, it's so clear that they are so full of shit. Every single member of this administration. Like, do you guys remember when Dan Bongino went out there and was talking about the Jeffrey Epstein suicide watch, like the prison tapes from the surveillance system? It was like, oh well, yeah, he killed himself. There's no one else involved. It was just him, and he just looked like the saddest sack of shit in the world. Like, these guys are all covering up a ton of malfeasance, a ton of criminal activity. It's blatantly obvious. And if they weren't, they would just release mostly unredacted documents. Keep in mind, even if you're like, well, no, I mean, it's all redacted to protect the victims. The law that was passed required them to issue an explanation for each and every redaction. And they didn't do that because they're full of shit and they're breaking the law. Like, that's full stop. Like, that's what's happening. And I think that if even Asmongold, the internet's dumbest man, can recognize it, if even Twitter user John Bunch of Numbers MAGA can recognize it, then Donald Trump is in some deep shit. And I don't know that he can dig himself out of it. We'll have to see, obviously, but it's going to be pretty interesting. But I don't think Trump is going to be coming out of this okay. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. This should be a segment going up in relatively short order here. And let me know in the comments. Comments longer than 8 words apparently do better in the algorithm. So if you liked my content, hit the like button on the video and drop a comment longer than 8 words. And consider subscribing to the show if you haven't yet. And please consider organizing with your local DSA, make them more effective, like the New York DSA, and also consider radicalizing your local Dems so that we can grow a grassroots movement that is capable of ousting corporate Democrats, capable of beating Republicans that work against the best interests of our communities, and also get amazing reforms like Medicare for All passed. We can, in fact, do it if we all work together. So get involved. If you don't know where to start, join our community. We'll help you learn where the ropes with your local Dems. We'll help you get started with your local DSA. And folks, please support the show. You guys make this possible. When you guys drop those subs, donos, memberships, super chats, etc., you guys are making it possible for me to do what I do. And I am incredibly grateful that you are allow me to do this job, even on dark days like this one, where we have just a mountain of some of the most heinous shit imaginable in front of us. So let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.